Okay, well, we get started here. Assignment number 6, that should be given back to you hopefully later today. And today we'll just finish up on some things. So, are there any questions? Let's talk about, or let's finish up accreditation first. So why do we want to do accreditation? Well, you know, to some respect, it helps put us on the same level as other people in other disciplines who also has some kind of accreditation process. It maybe prevents people who call themselves statisticians who do not have prevents them from calling themselves statisticians who have a statistics degree. It affirms that the fact that you're doing continuing education, you're keeping up to date on stuff, and also there are certain ethical standards that one has to abide by. So with respect to accreditation, there are 2 levels of accreditation available from the American Statistical Association. The lowest level is called GStat, and this is fairly new. About 2 years ago it came out. And then Pstat, which was what came out originally with when accreditation was started. And so what GStat stands for is Graduate Statistician. And all it is just allows someone who wants to go through the accreditation process, it gives them a place to start. You don't have to start with GStat, but you can. In fact, I think once you get a degree in statistics, you'll be able to get the GStat designation if you prefer, if you would like to. Now, with respect to Pstat, now this is actually a registered trademark of the American Statistical Association. Pstat's short for Accredited Professional Statistician. And at this level, you have to show that you've had a number of years of experience. And as you'll see shortly, the process is a little bit more difficult. There's actually a committee that reviews your application. You have to have people who vouch for you, saying that, yes, you are a good statistician. Now, you'll notice here the number of people who have these designations. So the American Statistical Association has a little bit less than 20,000 members. And you can see from those figures there that there's not a whole lot of people who have actually done this yet. Again, just realize that this is still fairly new. As it will take time for these numbers to go up. They continue to go up. But not necessarily every statistician has necessarily a need to go through one of these accreditations. For example, I have deeply thought about becoming an accredited statistician. But for me, in the end, at least for what I do, it's not going to be helpful because I primarily focus on research, statistical research. I do not do hardly any consulting at all. So I'm not interacting. Well, I do interact to some respect, yes, but I'm not interacting on a daily basis with non-statisticians trying to help them solve their problems. So for me, accreditation is not necessarily going to help me. The reason why I've thought about doing it is because I think it's good for the profession. Once you become accredited, you can put more letters behind your name. So, after you get your master's degree, you can put an MS. After you get your PhD, you can put a PhD behind your name. And now you can, with accreditation, you can put GStat or Pstat behind your name. So, for example, my co-author of my categorical data analysis book, Tom Logan there, he is actually a Pstat both in the U.S. and in Canada. He lives in Vancouver. So he can actually put Pstat for the U.S. and then when he's in Canada, he can put, I think it's also called Pstat there too. So you can put lots of letters behind his name. Well, what's the process? Well, with GStat, there is no application fee. With Pstat, you have to pay $120. And you do this once every 5 years to apply. There's an $85 annual maintenance fee associated with these designations. In the end, though, the fees associated with it kind of pay for themselves because the American Statistical Association gives various discounts on like attending conferences, on attending short courses if you are an accredited statistician. So just to give you an example, and why you wouldn't pay this at this time in your careers, but once you get out of school, the regular price for a short course, an all-day short course at JSM is $500. And so if you get a 20% discount, that's $100 less. Okay, well, there you go. That pays for your annual maintenance fee. The ASA says that this is not a money maker. That's what they say. So they're doing it as a professional service. So that's the fees involved. What about the actual application process itself? Well, you have to actually submit a formal application, but there are no tests. So unlike, for example, actuarial science or many other areas, there's no tests involved with becoming an accredited statistician. Rather, you submit the application, and depending upon what level you're going for, Pstat or GStat, you might have to get additional information. So you can see with Pstat, it's really not too difficult. Basically put your CV together and tell us a little bit what you've done. With Pstat, probably the most difficult part is, well, you have to provide 2 referees. Well, they call them referees. I would say basically people have to write a reference letter for you to say, yes, this person is good in what they do. They have ethical standards. They maintain a continuing education part of what they do. And so, that obviously you have to have people vouch for you. And ideally, it would be, let's say, other accredited statisticians already that could do that for you. More information is available on the website regarding the actual application process. So there's an actual accreditation committee then that reviews everything, and they'll decide whether or not you earn it. So once you do earn accreditation, well, what do you have to do to maintain it? Well, as you might expect, continue doing what you've been doing. Okay? And so, for example, the ASA doesn't have strict rules, but they say at least 60 hours of professional development each year. This is very common in other disciplines too, where they, as my wife is an attorney, she has a certain number of professional development, continuing education hours that she has to maintain every year to maintain her bar license. So this is not necessarily anything new. And in the end, 60 hours might seem a lot, but it really isn't. Imagine attending JSM. JSM, goes essentially for 4 days, so you have probably at least half of your hours from that. But also you can, do other stuff, such as even self-directed learning towards getting that 60 hours. So with respect to GStat, the designations last for 7 years, and then basically after that, you need to apply for a Pstat designation, and Pstat, I think I've already said, it's every 5 years. So that's accreditation. A real quick conclusion to that. Are there any questions? As we've seen, there's not a whole lot of, the number of people who have done this is a little over 400, but I think this is something that's going to continue to grow, and so that's why I wanted to mention it to you. And I think it's an important thing to consider to do. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about that productivity tools set of lecture notes that we examined a few weeks ago, and we're not going to be able to do everything in that section. I just want to look at one particular item left in this section. I do recommend that you read the stuff that I don't talk about, but I don't think it's finals day here. We don't need to continue looking at every little detail. The thing that I want to talk about is something that all of you will encounter at some point in your careers here, and even outside after you graduate from our department, and that is you're going to need to find papers regarding statistical research. Maybe you have a particular method that you're trying to learn more about. Well, how do you find a particular paper that explains that? Or maybe, especially obviously when you're doing your dissertation, how are you going to find how are you going to find the research that's relevant to what you are working on? And so, in statistics, there are primarily two different search tools that we use to find statistical papers, to find books or other resources that we're interested in. The first one's called the Current Index to Statistics, or CIS for short. This, for a very long time, has been the traditional tool, and until recently, the only tool that statisticians have used to find statistics papers. CIS just focuses on statistics itself. So it's a very great tool for that purpose. Unfortunately, it hasn't really kept up with the times in terms of various technological innovations that have occurred. And I'm actually on the committee that is actually governing the CIS. And just on, what day was it, November 1st, we got an email from one of the coordinators for the committee, and finally there was a decision on what to do regarding CIS, since things had not been kept up to date as they should be, and they have decided to discontinue it. This will occur January 1, 2020. You can look at my notes if you want to see why there are issues with CIS, but I think it would be best if we just spent our time on the tool that basically caused CIS to go away, and that is Google Scholar. Just out of curiosity, how many of you use Google Scholar? Okay, good. I mean, Google Scholar is not perfect. I'll show you where it's not perfect. There are some things that CIS does better than Google Scholar, but the benefits from using Google Scholar outweigh the minuses, you could say, when it's compared to CIS. Ideally, what would be nice is if we could somehow, and I've actually looked into this, use, let's say, this is what I had thought of, use R to send a query to Google Scholar, and then have R use some kind of filtering mechanism with the search results that are returned, so that you can get just the ones that are really relevant. I looked into that some, and then eventually I came across somebody's actually written some R programs to actually do that. The problem is because of Google Scholar's license is kind of restrictive in that you're not actually allowed to do that. And you can use the program for like 1 or 2 times, and then eventually Google Scholar will start blocking you. It won't let you use it anymore. Okay, well, I'm glad that all of you have had experience with Google Scholar. So some of this might be review, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're not necessarily using it to its fullest potential, or not necessarily aware of some things that we want to use it for with respect to statistics. So let me go over here to Google Scholar. Okay, obviously I'm at Google Scholar right now, and as you might expect, you could type, for example, a name, and corresponding papers to that name will pop up. Nothing new there. It's like a regular old Google search. Now, so the first one up, its first paper here is the Drosophila A PKC regulates cell polarity and cell proliferation in neuroblasts and epithelia. That's what came up with my name. Did I write that paper? Did someone who wrote that paper cite one of my works and that's why it came up? No. Why did this paper come up? Well, address correspondence to Chris Q. Doe and they cite some other Builder et al. Paper. There are actually other builders out there that spell it that way without a U in the last name. That's why this paper came up, along with the fact that 233 people have cited it. Okay? In CIS, this wouldn't happen. And in fact, this is not even a statistical research paper. And it takes me to get down to eventually here, where I get to my very first paper, actually my very first paper I ever wrote, about field goal kicking back in 1998. Odd that that one would come up, considering that's probably the least amount of research that I did for any paper. And if we keep on going down here, let's see now. Okay, I have the fact that I have a package in R. Basically, the package directions have, or the manual has popped up. That's kind of odd. And look at the very last one. It says that I have attended the 2000 Conference for Applied Statistics in Agriculture at Kansas State University. Wow, isn't that great? Thank you, Google Scholar. Again, this kind of stuff wouldn't come up with CIS, but so my first, I guess, word of warning when you're using this is that obviously not everything's relevant, and there's a lot of stuff that's not going to be relevant. I mean, you have that with regular old Google searches too, but you know what this says too. You need to go beyond the first page of searches, not just rely on the first page. Let's see here. And so, you know, often too, you know, you get not necessarily just papers that you're popping up here. You get, let's say, papers in terms of published in a referee journal. You get stuff that's actually published, let's say, or put on the web, on a personal website, and a lot of that stuff's just not relevant. And so, the fact that there is not a way to filter out some of this stuff and just focus on statistical research papers and statistical journals is a big downside to Google Scholar. A big downside. But like I said, in CIS just focus on statistical research papers. But like I said, there's, in the end, the benefits of it outweigh these problems. And so one of the benefits of it is this right here, this cited by 10. So this tells me all the papers that are out there who have cited my particular field goal kicking paper. Now, why is this important to know? I'll just ask this. Why is this important to know? Is it just I feel good because 10 people have cited me? Well, sure, I feel a little bit good about that, yes, but that's not really the big reason why this is good. From a research perspective, why is this good to know?
Networking.
Excuse me?
Networking.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could use this to say, hey, you know, I see, hey, Scott Berry, I see you've done some work on this. Hey, maybe we can collaborate, and I think that's what you're talking about. But why else?
What you're doing valuable to anybody else?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Here's the big reason. I wrote this paper in 1998. Maybe somebody else has done something that's better than what I've done. And so when you are doing research, it's very important. You know, if you find a paper that's like relevant to what you're doing, it's very important that you follow up. Follow the what's the right word? I can't think of the right word right now, but follow the path of other papers that are citing it to see if they've done something that's even better, that's relevant to what you're doing. Because, you know, imagine, you know, someday many of you are going to be working on your dissertation and you find a paper, let's say from 1998, and you think, I have a great idea. If I did this instead, hey, this would be an improvement. And so you work on it. And if you didn't follow up on all the papers that cited that 1998 paper, maybe somebody's already beaten you to it, and now you've wasted a whole bunch of time. Or something else that I see, you know, let's say a student. I'm speaking from an actual example that occurred here. A student writes a paper. It's a good paper, and it was actually citing a paper of mine from, I think it was like 2004. This wasn't my student. Cited my paper and basically did something that was better. Okay. But the problem was the student didn't look at the fact that I had a paper from 2005 that improved upon my method, and then that student never made a comparison in their research to see, hey, was their method better than what is actually known as a better method than the 2004 paper. And so what that student's going to have to do is redo some stuff because they did not do a full search to understand what is out there. And so this citation thing can be very, very, very helpful. And this is not actually available in CIS. Excuse me. So another good thing, and those of you who are my Stat 950 class have already seen this, is that I can go over here to, this is the 1998 paper again, import in BibTeX, and I get the actual BibTeX code that could be used with LaTeX or LIX for the current, for the corresponding publication. And so you can just simply copy and paste this into a software package like JabRef, and there you got your paper that you can cite very easily. Now, if I come over here to more, we have information about cite, and if you were just to simply type out a citation yourself, here's a variety of different styles. And if you have me in 850, you've probably heard me say this before. In statistics itself, we don't have necessarily one particular style. You know, we don't follow APA, we don't follow MLA. Every journal seems to be different. If I were to pick one citation way to use in a bibliography or a list of references, I would usually use APA. That's the closest to, like, for example, what the American Statistical Association uses with their journals. And then eventually, you know, when you do, let's see, how do I get back there? Eventually, when you do actually, let's say, start publishing papers and stuff, you know, you can create your own little Google Scholar webpage so that people can find out about you. And you can look at the H index, the I-10 index, and that will tell you how popular you are. To be honest, I don't know how to interpret those. Let's see. Okay. Any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the ResearchGate?
I've never really used ResearchGate. I don't really know of anybody who does. I'm familiar with the name itself, but I don't ever use it. Have you found it to be useful? Is that what you're?
Yeah, it's kind of good. It's search like not this broad.
Okay.
Yeah, more narrow.
Narrow in what way?
Like when you use Google Scholar on the first page, like how long is irrelevant. Google Research, that the ResearchGate is kind of like giving more relevant results.
Okay. I will look into that more. I know my experience with ResearchGate is I get annoying emails that I never signed up for that say, oh, you have been cited in some paper. Well, okay. Quit sending me those annoying emails. You don't need to tell me that. So I will look into that more because if something's more narrow, that will be helpful. Thank you for bringing that up.
Is there like a level of citations on a paper in statistics that kind of signals that it's like a good paper or a more fundamental paper in a certain area?
No, not that I know of. As far as my experiences, statisticians try to ignore some of that kind of stuff about, oh, I've been cited 10 times, or I've been cited 50 times, or whatever. The people who I think look at that stuff more are the deans who decide on promotion and tenure. The problem is when they try to compare across disciplines, because in statistics we're cited a lot less than if you were to, let's say, have a paper in a medical journal. And people who do publish in medical journals are often publishing a lot smaller papers than what we do. So they're going to have a lot more citations over a career than someone in statistics. And a dean who thinks that they are smart and can use metrics or other quantitative tools to make comparisons, and that dean can make poor comparisons because of that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So let's talk about goals for next semester. So this is something that I posted mid last week, and I apologize. Maybe I should have told you that I posted it to my website. But a lot of this is review. But I think, hey, we're at the end of the semester. I think it's good to review some stuff. But there's also some other things here that I will emphasize more since now that we're done with the whole semester. So, obviously the very first day of class, that set of notes is something to always look back at regarding information about what's important for you to know in terms of your academic career. But let's first start talking about for most of you who are getting a master's degree, what should your goals be for next semester? Obviously, we are down here. You'll all be taking these 2 courses, and then you'll have room for an elective. Excuse me. 2 big things. Excuse me. I'm all choked up about this. It's the last day of class. The 2 big things that you got to get done next semester: form a supervisory committee, file a memorandum of courses with graduate studies. You've got to get those done next semester. Let's talk about those in more detail, or just overall key items of things that you should do. Okay, first of all, now I know not necessarily all of you may want to go on for a PhD, but I do encourage you to at least give it a try. Take that PhD qualifying exam that will be offered for those of you who are in the master's program right now, will be offered January 2018. You might be thinking, geez, that's a year away. I don't have anything to worry about until December 31st of next year. No, start preparing now. And I've discussed this before, that the way to start preparing now is to make sure that for your core courses, that this is what the exam will be over, that you get together a set of study materials that are really good now, so that when you do start focusing on that exam next year, you have a lot to go on already. This is not an exam where you just go into it not even studying at all. Okay? So just to give you an idea, so this morning I dug through my archives, and I got this little sheet of paper that I put together when I was studying for my corresponding exam when I was in grad school. This is the sheet right there. And the main thing is this right here is basically I track my number of hours of study. This is an old actuarial science study trick that you use when you study for actuarial exams, is that to make sure that you put in the time, you write down the hours that you are studying. And the final number that I have here for the number of hours that I studied was 220 hours. This was from a period of basically December 21st to January 14th, many years ago. I point this out is, first of all, this gives you a good example of how to make sure you study enough hours, but also just to show you that, yeah, indeed, you do need to study for this. This is not an exam that you go into without studying. And when I went into this exam, or when I started studying for it, I had made the preparations of putting great study materials together for my courses when I was taking them. And so everyone's different. Maybe you can get away with studying for 50 hours or 100 hours or something like that. But my philosophy is that you study enough the first time, so you don't have to take it the second time. So if you have to take it the second time, you're going to be studying more hours combined by having to take it 2 times rather than just once. Okay. Also, next semester, obviously apply for internships. I know not necessarily all of you maybe can to have an internship next summer, but if you can't, make sure you get those applications in. You know, as I mentioned before, for first-year master students, this is the most difficult time to find an internship. So if you don't find one, you know, don't get down on yourselves, but at least give it a try. You know, we do have students who are successful and are able to get an internship. So as I was mentioned before, one of the big things that you have to get done is form that supervisory committee. So what you should do is about spring break time, make a decision about what you want for your supervisory committee. The first big decision is essentially your advisor. And you have 2 choices. You can find an advisor amongst all of our stat faculty. So, you know, if you know, for example, I know, a few of you who are interested in going, getting a PhD, going into academics where you're more focused on the teaching side. So you think about, okay, what professors out there in our department, I know you're new to our department, but what professors out there would be good to help mentor you in that area? Well, Aaron Blankenship, Walt Stroop. Those are 2 professors who have a lot of success with getting students into those kinds of positions, and also some of their research is geared towards that. So that's one example. There's other areas I know you guys are interested in too. Well, this is where you're going to need to look a little bit at the web pages of the faculty about who may have similar interests as you do. Obviously, those web pages for some faculty are not as good as other faculty. So if you have any questions, you don't necessarily want to talk to the professors themselves immediately, come talk to me. I'll give you some advice. Okay? So if you decide to find your own advisor, then that advisor will say, okay, now we need to form the supervisory committee. So the advisor is the chair of that committee, and he or she will suggest 2 other faculty. So there has to be 2 other stat faculty. Well, 2 other faculty. They don't all have to be from stat. They'll suggest 2 other faculty that you could ask to be on the committee. If they agree, then you all get together for a committee meeting. You'll talk about your memorandum of courses to make sure that you are taking the right courses. And they'll just review with you, or they'll ask you about what are your goals, and they'll just try to give you advice. Okay? So one thing about finding an advisor, the approach that I would recommend that you do is that, let's say that you have 2 professors that you see that maybe have similar things that they like that you do. Well, what I would recommend that you do is that you send them an email and say, hey, I'm looking for an advisor. I'm interested in talking to you more about what you do and to see if what my goals are, how that match up with what your research area is or what you do. And so then you just schedule the meeting. You have maybe a 30-minute conversation, and then you could then do the same thing with another professor, and then from there you make a decision. If you end up choosing one advisor versus another one that you, or one professor as your advisor versus another one that you also talk to, it's okay to tell that other professor, sorry, I chose this other one. They're not going to hold anything against you. They're not going to be like, why didn't they choose me? Don't worry about that. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do for your supervisory committee is that, as I've mentioned before, so there's a advisement subcommittee of the graduate committee that is your temporary advisors right now. You can make us then your permanent advising committee if you want to. It's up to you. I recommend that at least, let's say maybe over spring break, you think about what you want to do, look through the faculty, see if interests match up with some other faculty member, at least make an effort. Don't just go with the default, which is the advisement subcommittee. In the end, yes?
we have to get a third person in on it since the subcommittee is only 2?
No.
If that were to happen. Okay.
No, yeah, and traditionally we've always had a 3-member committee, so that's why I suggested having two additional ones. I think in the end, you talk to your advisor about what they want to do. And the reason why you might be thinking, well, geez, why don't we know how many members we have to have? Well, as graduate chair, I found this out. I didn't know this before, despite being here, about 9 years prior. On your memorandum of courses, the faculty names that go on there are the graduate committee chair, me, I have to sign it, and then your advisor. Those are essentially the only 2 names that are on there. So graduate studies doesn't care if you actually form an entire committee of faculty, because they have no record of it, which is odd, but that's the way it is. Now, there's one exception to what I just said there, and that is if you did do a thesis, you do have to have a regular committee that has 3 people on it. But again, very rarely does anybody do a thesis in our department. So anyway, by early April, get this done, okay? Don't put this off. If you put this off and you don't get it done by the end of the semester, you'll start getting mean emails or letters from graduate studies saying, why haven't you done this yet? Okay? And then very often then they'll email me too and ask, why hasn't this student done this yet? So, as I said here, you've got to submit that memorandum of courses. Obviously, you've already partially done this for assignment number 1. It's not too difficult. The key, the most difficult thing is that you have to list out all the courses that you're going to take. Do you know what courses you're going to take next academic year? You have an idea of a few of them, yes, because they're required. But you don't know about the electives yet. And so, well, what do you fill in there? Well, when we get closer to, when we get into April, we'll know what courses are going to be offered next fall. We'll know that probably by mid-March. And then for that following spring, we'll have a good idea of what courses are out there. I'm actually on the committee with Aaron and Aaron Blankenship and Bert Clark that's putting together the set of courses for next academic year. And we actually just had a rough draft that was circulated amongst all of us yesterday via email. So I have a general idea of what's going to be offered out there now. It will change from our draft. But when it comes to mid-April, if you have not had any kind of announcement about what courses are going to be out there, just contact me and I'll let you know. Okay? Also, you need to decide on option 2 or option 3. If you remember, option 2 essentially is a 36 credit hour master's degree with a minor. Option 3 is 36 credit hour master's degree with no minor. The majority of students do this, but a significant number do this as well. And so, typically a minor is going to be like 9 credit hours in some other area. And so, one big area right now would be like computer science, since they have a lot of data science things in it. But, you can minor in a bunch of different areas. What I recommend that you do is, if you have an area that you're interested in, take a look at the corresponding department's website, see what the requirements are for a minor. Often those requirements will be hidden, and so you have to really dig deep into those websites to find it. I often get emails from other students from other departments asking, what do I have to do for a minor? I don't think it's hidden on our webpage, and I'm actually one of the people that can edit the web pages. I purposely try not to make it hidden, but I still have people email me that. If you still can't find it on their web page, the person to talk to is the graduate chair of that department. And if you're not for sure from the web page who that is, you just email the secretary in that department. Okay, any questions? Okay, so after next semester, obviously it would be great if you could get an internship, prepare for that PhD qualifying exam. Now, remember, if you take this qualifying exam and you pass it, that basically serves as what's called your Master's Comprehensive Exam 2. So you are essentially done with that test component of your master's degree that everyone has to do. If, though, you do not pass that exam, you will need to do this part here, that oral explanation of the Stat 825 project. And that will serve as your Master's Comprehensive Exam. And lastly, it's okay to start taking PhD core courses in 2017 and 2018 if you think that you might want to go on for a PhD. It's okay to start doing that. In particular, one course that I think will be good for all of you, even if you don't go on, even if you know for sure you're not going to go on for a PhD. Stat 950, which is Computational Statistics 1. That will be offered, I am 95% confident that it will be offered in fall 2017. If you want to have a better idea of what that course will be covering, take a look at my corresponding course website when I was the last one to teach it here. Now, I will most likely be on sabbatical, though, next year, so I will most likely not be the one who's teaching it. And so the person who teaches it is probably going to teach it a little bit differently, but there's going to be a lot of similar topics. Why is this course important? Well, computing gets put into statistics more and more and more every year. So having a background in this, even if you just stop at the PhD level, stop at the master's level, don't go on for a PhD, this will help you. And so this could be like the one elective that you have a room for in the fall for a master's student. But there will be other courses too that you can take. So don't just think that this is your only choice. For example, again, this is based upon my knowledge of being on this committee. There is most likely going to be a survival analysis course offered at UMC for via long-distance education mechanisms next fall too. And what survival analysis is simply, let's say a very simple example. You have maybe a new cancer drug. You want to understand, well, what's the effectiveness of this cancer drug, and so you're measuring maybe how many more years a person lives or months that they live after starting to take this new drug to treat cancer. And so one of the cool things that happens is that let's say that a particular study only has funding for maybe 24 months, and the person has lived for 24 months. But they've lived longer than that, so how do you handle that? And so you have what's called, in this case, right sensor data. They've lived 24 plus. They've lived more than 24 months. How do you take that into account in your analysis? Don't just want to call it 24. It's actually more than 24. And so this survival analysis really gets into, allows a person to get a better understanding of likelihood-based methods for how to handle stuff like this. Okay, so that's for masters. Any questions? Okay, for those of you who are PhD students, let's see here. So, excuse me. Let's see. Do one little note here is that the Stat 984, which I had originally in my a previous document being offered in the fall, will actually be offered next spring 2018, and the computational statistics will be offered in the fall. Okay, so obviously, if you're going to do it, take the PhD qualifying exam that's offered this January, apply for internships, and then after you pass that PhD qualifying exam, start finding an advisor. Whether or not you actually have a supervisory committee, it's not necessarily that important to have it done that semester. And there's obviously a lot of things that you have to be concerned about once you are a PhD student. Well, that form that committee, submit a program of studies, that's like your memorandum of courses, complete your dissertation, pass various exams. There's a lot of work. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask myself or Yushin. This is our job. We're here to help you as needed. Please remember that there is this Steps to Degree Completion web page on Graduate Studies' website, which can be very helpful because it shows you the deadlines to get stuff done. And why not? Let's talk about after you graduate. Remember to give back to the program here in terms of, maybe a few years down the line, I'll ask you, hey, do you want to give an alpha seminar presentation? These can be helpful, obviously, to the students. Hire our students as interns. Hire our graduates. And also support the department through donations to the Department of Statistics Development Fund, that number, at the University of Nebraska Foundation. Again, my wife works for the foundation, so she wants me to mention this. But in the grand scheme of things, now you might be thinking, we're a big company, you could say, essentially, the university. We have lots of money. No, we don't. If you make donations to the university, one of the first things you should do is channel it towards the Department of Statistics. And what will we put that money to use for? Well, to help fund, for example, student travel to conferences, to help pay for ASA memberships, to fund scholarships and stuff like that. That supports statistics itself. For example, I annually donate to the Kansas State University Department of Statistics, as many other graduates do as well. And that money, helps make the department better. The better the department, the better that degree is going to look on your CV. Okay, next. So I talked about PhD comics, I think, a little bit in this class. Has anybody take a look at PhD comics by chance? Okay. If you're looking for something to do or winter break, check out the website. Take a look at the PhD Movie 1. You can also take a look at the PhD Movie 2. They are both excellent movies. Just realize that these movies were done by using non-professional actors. It's interesting how, there are some things that's like, oh, okay, yeah, you wouldn't see that in if it was like a Star Wars movie. But it's done, they're done very good. You do have to pay to actually watch them. I think they're like $5 a piece, so not that much in the end. And I think one of the things that I like about it is because I can relate back to my own graduate school career, and even as in academics now, that, yeah, I see that all the time. And they present it in a comedy standpoint. It's primarily about two graduate students. One, the nameless graduate student. He's just starting off his graduate career. And then the second graduate student, her name is Cecilia, and she's finishing off her graduate career. And with that then, since we have the time, we are going to take a look at the preview for the first movie that might get you interested in. And you might think, oh my gosh, I have finals to study for right now. Well, yes, you do. But graduate school can be quite stressful. And when you see that there are other people who are faced with similar situations to what you face, and they present it in a comedy form, it can be a little bit of an hour of stress relief if you watch the whole movie. So let's see if I can get this done here. So I guess, let me say a few things. I almost was going to show the whole movie as the final exam, but since we had other material, I decided not to. Also, how should I say? Some things are exaggerated. Graduate school isn't that bad. So just realize that when you watch this.
Listen, being a PhD student, working with a professor, it's a lot like a marriage.
I'm so happy to meet you. Can you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, I was hoping that maybe...
I'll be right there.
Whole thing typically lasts 5 to 7 years.
Who are you? Oh, I'm a grad student.
50% of them end in a bitter divorce.
Yes, I would love to take you as my PhD student.
Really?
They're kicking me out.
And it all culminates in a big ceremony where you walk down the aisle wearing a fancy gown.
Hey, today's my first day as a teaching assistant for Professor Chu's class. I watched Dead Poet Society last night for inspiration. You know that movie doesn't end well. Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yeah. How's research going? Don't you know you're never supposed to ask a grad student that question?
Do you have any kids? No. Married?
No.
Seeing anyone?
No.
Oh.
How's your thesis going?
Actually, I'm still in school. Oh.
In the highest levels of higher education, there's always someone who's slaughtered.
Why? Why am I doing this? I have a college degree. A monkey could do this.
Research is torture.
I need help with that.
Let's see what you got.
I haven't actually done any of it.
I need your results on my desk by Monday.
What's this number you have here?
That's a 7.
What does it represent?
The answer?
Actually, sir, I've been having some problems.
But why did you get that answer?
Because the problem asked for it.
In academia, we never use the word problem. Call them challenges, issues, but never problems.
Aren't you supposed to help me?
I have issues.
Not my problem.
Working hard? Are you even in this class? Or hardly working?
Do you ever feel like you're just an imposter?
Around here, everyone is an imposter. You can't be a grad student forever.
I'm going to be 35 in a few months.
35? In base 7?
Grad school's going great. I'm actually doing an independent study for a professor. It's called Workspace Augmentation of Photon Impingements Through Impurities Removal.
Piled higher and deeper.
Oh, I forgot. Some of the students came in this late. Could you grade them too?
Come on, can't we just bury them?
Oh, just your feelings.
So anyway, if you're looking for a stress relief, take a look at the movie. It is, well, the first movie and the second movie are both quite good. And lastly, if you're into music, there is a band at NC State in their Department of Statistics called The Fifth Moment. And they have done a number of parodies of various songs, such as Advise Me Maybe, which is based upon the Call Me Maybe song. I recommend that because it talks about how to find an advisor. So, anyway, it was actually this song was actually filmed at their Department of Statistics annual holiday gathering that they had. Okay, so that ends the goals for this semester. Any questions? Okay.